just bear with me. I'm going to wait for confirmation that the recording is started. Okay, the meeting is recording. So I'll now take this adjournment for the meeting of the Housing and Technical Resources Committee of the 29th of September 2021. So Councillor Brown, I see that you're here. Also Councillor Buchanan, Councillor Kalakis. Yep, I see that you're here. Thank you. Councillor Campbell has tendered his apologies. Councillor Carmichael is here, as is Councillor Chalmers. Councillor Convery is here. Councillor Cooper. I don't see that Councillor Cooper is in attendance, so I'll leave that. I have apologies from Councillor Corbett. Councillor Devlin, I see that you're here. Councillor Dorman, I understand that you are substituting for Councillor Donnelly. Can you confirm that that is the case?
That's correct, Pauline.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton, I see that you're here, as is Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Fulton.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Gray. Nope, not hearing anything from Councillor Gray.
There's apologies from Councillor Gray, Pauline.
Thank you. Councillor Greenshields. No, nothing from Councillor Greenshields. Councillor Holford is here. Councillor Horsham is here. Councillor Lennon is here, as is Councillor Logan. Councillor McGavigan has indicated that he may be able to join the meeting later. Councillor Razak.
I'm subbing for him, Pauline. It's Catherine McClymont.
Thank you. Councillor Ross. Okay, nothing from...
Yes, I'm here,
Ross.
thanks. Yes, I'm...
Great, thank you. Councillor Shearer, I have apologies for. Councillor Wark is here, as is Councillor Wilson, and there are a number of officers also in attendance at the meeting. And with that, I'll hand back to you for the business of the meeting, Chair.
Thank you, Pauline. We'll move on to the agenda for this morning's meeting. So, agenda item 1, any declarations of interest? I can see a hand raised.
Hi, Chair, it's Maureen Chalmers. I've got an interest in item 11. I've publicly supported the organisation with their asset transfer.
Okay, thanks. Maureen, we'll ask you to leave the meeting at that point and we'll invite you once the discussion's concluded. Any further declarations of interest? If there are none, we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? If there are none, I'll move them as a correct record.
Second that, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to the monitoring items. Agenda item 3, the revenue budget monitoring paper for 2021-2022, excluding the housing revenue account. And Hazel will speak to this report. Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to provide you with information on actual expenditure against the revenue budget for housing and technical resources, excluding the HRA, the period covered 1st of April 2021 to 13th of August 2021, and that's our accounting period 5. This is the second report we've brought to committee for the current financial year 2021. And as in previous reports, I've got appendices A through to D that provide details of the financial position. You'll remember that there's a new appendix D covering the COVID-19 additional costs. If I could refer you to section 5.1 of the report, we note there that as at the 13th of August 2021, we have an overspend position against the phase budget, and the value of that is 0.131 million. That overspend is caused by the additional expenditure in relation to COVID-19, includes a number of costs, but principally additional temporary accommodation for homeless people. Just note again that the property services section continues to incur fixed costs that we require to offset by income recovery. And the estimated value that we're including for that is 3.211 million as at the 13th of August 2021. If I could refer members back to section 2 of the report, The committee is asked to note the overspend of 0.131 million as at 13th of August, and also to, if you could approve the proposed budget requirements I've included in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll invite Robert Brown to speak.
Yes, just the obvious question with regard to 5.2, Chair, if I may, the overspend on COVID. To what extent is this recoverable or likely to be recoverable from Scottish Government funding on this matter? Up to now, I think most of the funding we've had on this has covered the outlay, but there's no mention, I don't think, if I'm not misunderstanding the report, in this one of a recovery from funding from the Scottish Government here.
Thank you. Hazel, would you like to respond?
Yes, yes, we do. Those costs are expected to be covered. So we made an estimate at the start of this financial year as to what we anticipated it would cost us going through the pandemic in this year. And we have, we call it the cost of recovery, and we have included our estimate within that. And we are currently, the 0.131 million is within the budget that we're expecting. So we do have that covered by Scottish Government. Thanks.
Okay, Bob. Are there any further questions? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
We'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for the years 2021-2022 for the Housing Revenue Account, and Hazel will speak to this report again.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, we're looking at the actual expenditure against the revenue budget, this time for the HRA portion of the Housing Technical Resources budget. And again, the period covered is 1st of April 2021 to 13th of August 2021, accounting period 5. Again, this is the second report to committee for that this financial year. Again, at section 5 of the report, we provide you a wee bit of detail, and we're just noting there that for the HRA side, there's a break-even position against the phase budget. Again, I'm just noting that the HRA requires to cover some of those fixed costs that I mentioned in the previous report, currently estimating that at 0.233 million for HRA revenue budget. Again, I would refer members back to section 2 of the report, ask you to note the break-even position as at the 13th of August, and also could you approve the budget requirements there? Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Are there any questions? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the Capital Budget Monitoring Report for the same period, excluding the Housing Revenue Account, and Lorraine will speak to this report. I think you're on mute, Lorraine.
Apologies, clicked the wrong button. Thank you, Chair. This paper takes you through the capital budget monitoring for the non-HRA element of the resources programme. Again, similar to Hazel, it reflects the budget and spend position to the 13th of August, which is our accounting period 5. Section 3 of the report on page 27 provides the background to the programme and advises that the budget was reported at the last Housing and Technical Resources Committee of £8.387 million. Since that last meeting, adjustments have been presented to the Executive Committee for approval, and for this resource, they total a net increase of £159,000, and those are detailed in Appendix A to your report. This has resulted in a net budget for the year of £8.546 million. Section 4 details the capital programme update for the current year. Section 4.1 notes that the resources total capital programme for the year is now the £8.546 million. As at the 13th of August, the anticipated spend was £848,000 and we had actual spend of £629,000. This represents a position of £219,000 behind profile and mainly reflects the anticipated timing of spend on a number of multi-year and multi-project programmes such as Essential Services Fabric Upgrades, Prioritise Urgent Investment and the Central Energy Efficiency Fund programme. I'll be looking to refer committee back to the recommendations then in section 2 of the report and ask that the Housing and Technical Resources budget of £8.546 million and the spend to the 13th of August of £629,000 be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorraine. Are there any questions in relation to the report? If there are none, can we agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Capital Budget Monitoring Report for the same period for the Housing Revenue Account, and Hazel will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. Again, covering the period 1st of April to 13th of August for the HRA Capital Programme this time. Again, second report to committee in the current financial year. Just noting at 3.2 that the investment programme has been reviewed and we're required to move some of the elements carry forward into 22-23. There's some detail on that in section 3.2. Just some slippage, planning delays, various things in there. So we now have a revised housing capital programme of 79.640 million. Appendix A of the report gives you further details and includes our funding sources. At section 5.2 of the report, we note that the actual spend to the 13th of August 2021 was 26.065 million. And just reminding you that that includes some expenditure to cover those fixed overheads for the property services section. That was currently estimated at 2.978 million. Section 5.3 just notes that we are currently experiencing some material shortages and increased prices. So that continues to be monitored just to understand what, if any, impact that may have on the programme. Again, if I could refer members back to section 2 of the report, please note the revised HRA capital programme of 79.640 million and the expenditure to date of 26.065 million. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any questions in relation to the report? If there aren't, sorry, I see Margaret Cooper has her hand up. Councillor Cooper.
Josh, it's really just to apologise for arriving late at the meeting. I couldn't get logged on to log on 3 times to get there. So it's just to say I'm sorry for that, Chair, and I hope that Pauline adds me to the attendees, please.
No problem, Councillor Cooper.
Okay, are there any further questions in relation to the paper? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the workforce monitoring report for May to July 2021, and Elaine will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. As committee will know, this is the standard workforce monitoring report, which is prepared by personnel, and the purpose of the report is to provide an update to you all on the employment information for the resource for the period May to July of 2021. As normal, I'll just outline some of the key stats. So at paragraph 4.1, in respect of maximising attendance, you'll see that the resource absence figure for July this year was 4.7%, which represented an increase of 0.1 when compared to the previous month. And again, compared to July of last year, the figure had increased by 2%. The July figure is 0.7% higher than the council-wide figure. You will see at Appendix 1 that it does show the absence figures for July 2019. Obviously, it's been requested at previous committees in terms of trying to do a comparison to the previous year because of the COVID impact last year in terms of our employees. So you'll see that the July 2019 figure was 4.6%, which is comparative to what we've shown for this year. So based on the absence figures at July this year, the projected annual average for the resource for 21-22 is 3.7% compared to the council-wide average of 4.7%. And committee will know that managers and personnel continue to work together to ensure that we are dealing with employees appropriately in respect of maximising attendance. The absence information that's contained within the report does include absences as a result of COVID, and at the time of the report being produced, the absence levels for the council were 6.44%, with 1.9% relating to COVID, and as at last week, that figure was 6.6% of an absence figure for the council, with 1.6% relating to COVID absence. Moving on to the occupational health information at 4.2, which is found in Appendix 2, that shows that there were 145 occupational health referrals made during the period. Again, this is showing an increase compared to last year, but looking at the workforce monitoring information for 2019, the figures are consistent with that year. I would say that the workforce monitoring information in 2019 was slightly different months that were presented to committee. So you got committee figures for May and June, and then you got figures for July to September. But having a look at both our figures for this year are fairly consistent with what we reported in 2019. Again, moving on to section 4.3, that details that there were 9 incidents recorded within the resource. And again, committee will know that we continue to monitor any incidents and report these as appropriately. The employee relations information is detailed at 4.4, and that shows there were 4 disciplinary hearings during the period. 4.5 details the leavers, and these are shown in Appendix 2, and that there were 11 leavers during the period eligible for an ex-interview. Unfortunately, no ex-interviews were conducted during that period, but we'd like to ensure committee that obviously we do invite employees to participate in that process, and they are sent a letter and given details on how to participate, and they are also told that they can do that anonymously as well, so they don't have to provide their details. Unfortunately, during this period, none were undertaken. 4.7 details that 31 employees left the resource, with managers indicating that 29 posts were being replaced, 1 post has been filled in a fixed term contract, and 1 has been held pending savings. Section 5 details the staffing watch information for the resource, and at June this year, there was an increase of 4 employees in posts for the resource. There are no other employee financial or other implications to detail, and I would refer committee back to section 2 within the report and ask for the committee to approve the recommendations to note the employment information for May to July of this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Elaine. Are there any questions or comments in relation to the report? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the Q4 progress update. And Annette will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides committee with a Q4 progress report on the resource plan for the period April 2020 to March 21. The resource plan for 2021 was approved by committee back in September 2020 and sets out the objectives and actions to be managed and delivered for the financial year. The plan was based upon objectives set out in the council plan and reflected the aspirations of the community plan and the neighbourhood plans. Progress against all measures is noted in section 4 and appendix 1 of the report. The plan had 59 measures overall, and at the end of Q4, 51 measures were on target, 1 was slightly behind, 3 were behind target, and 4 were to be reported later. Section 4.3 highlights the key achievements despite the challenges of the COVID pandemic, including the continued implementation of our rapid rehousing transition plan and meeting urgent housing need, meeting all demand for adaptations in council homes, and increasing the supply of social rented housing, with 197 additional affordable homes delivered, of which 44 were suitable for older people. Except at section 4.3.2, achievement against effectiveness and efficiency measures is also noted. Section 4.4 notes the 3 areas for improvement, where there's been some slippage against the target. This relates to achievement of timescales for adaptations, collection rates for factoring, and the completion timescales for gas safety checks. All of these were directly impacted by the pandemic. Improvement actions are being taken forward, and I can report that all due gas safety checks are complete. Committee is then asked to approve the following recommendations: that the resource plan Q4 progress report, summarised at 4.2 and detailed in appendix 1, be noted, that the key achievements by the resource detailed in 4.3 be noted, that the areas for improvement and management actions detailed at 4.4 of the report be noted, and the additional scrutiny changes in the RAG status between Q2 and Q4 also be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Annette. Is there any questions or comments in relation to the report? Councillor Brown.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I think this shouldn't go past without commenting favourably on some of the very good statistics in here in terms of the rent collection and the times for dealing with houses being renovated and so on and so forth, which I think, given the circumstances, are really absolutely excellent. Can I ask about the difference, though, between rent collections and factoring collection rates? Because you thought it would be in the same sort of ball game, broadly speaking. Are there any particular issues in the factoring section that give us issues there?
Yeah, the factoring collection was suspended for a period, Councillor Brown, as staff were diverted to other tasks. So the collection started later on in the year, so we didn't collect as much as we would have expected to, but recovery measures are now in place and to try and bring the collection rate back up this year. Our rent recovery was also suspended for a period, but as of September last year, there was a real focus on supporting people to pay their rent and with other aid that they might have needed financially.
Just as a supplement to that, Chair, if I may, I mean, factoring is sometimes subject to quibbles about the detail of the bill and so forth. I came across one of them on our casework issue yesterday. Is that a significant problem with factoring at the moment, or in terms of things being put on hold and therefore, if you like, not collected, or is it simply just the rate of recovery and having to catch up again?
Chair, if I could ask Frank McCafferty to answer that.
Yeah, of course. Frank, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Councillor, I mean, the both obviously the rent collection and the factoring collection are different, obviously different things. The rate of factoring collection has remained fairly consistent, but it's below the rate of rent collection. We do sometimes have issues with factoring collection, but nothing out of the ordinary, I would suggest. So they are different, and obviously people are slightly more reluctant to pay factoring bills than they are for their rent. And they will obviously ask a lot of questions relative to any bills that are issued for factoring. So we get a lot more questions around the charges that are through the factoring service.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'll bring in Councillor Holford.
Hello. Just to do with home adaptations, I noticed we are behind, obviously, and I also note that I just had an adaptation done to my home, which was classed as urgent and took 14 months. I'm happy that it's done and I understand the issues, but I'm just wondering how long before we can get back onto target and with these issues.
Would you like to respond, Frank?
Sorry, Chair, it's on mute there. If Frank could pick that up.
I can pick that up, Chair. Councillor, we are working hard to get back onto the kind of normal timescales that we would have expected. Part of the issue obviously has been a kind of pent up demand, which was released in May, because we weren't actually, obviously during the lockdown, we were only really doing those very, very, very urgent adaptations that were required to support hospital discharge due to the restrictions that were in place through the lockdown period. So we're working hard. I think we're getting there in terms of catching up with those. That's with colleagues within health and social care as well, because obviously they're at the front end of that process in terms of the assessment of requirements, and we react to that. We've got a shorter period of time at the back end of that, I would suggest, to actually get the work organised. And for homeowners, though the grant application process should be back to almost normal. For us, like I say, I think the part of the issue as well for both ourselves and health and social care is that kind of pent up demand that was released when we weren't able to carry out all the assessments that were required, and then obviously that falling through to the work that was required.
Thanks, Chair. It's just to ask, have we any plans underway to address the issue of fire alarms being fitted by February in all our council houses?
Would you like to respond?
I can respond to that as well. Yep, we have a plan, Councillor, in place. So we've already been working through that plan. We've made substantial progress in that. The target will be there or thereabouts in February. Obviously, it's been severely impacted on our ability to carry out works internally and decisions both to protect either tenants who are self-isolating or positive COVID cases, and also our workforce as well, where we didn't want to send workers into houses that may have put them at risk. But yet we have a plan. We've worked our way through that. I can get the figures. I don't have them to hand, but I can get the figures in terms of where we are with that. But we've done literally, thousands and thousands of checks and additional works. We were in a reasonable position in that we had already carried out obviously all of the previous work in terms of fire alarms being hardwired and interlinked. So in a lot of cases, we're just adding to that system that was there. So we weren't starting from the very lowest baseline installing these. So we actually had hardwired and interlinked fire smoke detectors in place. So in some instances, the new regulations just means that we had to extend either one or two additional devices to that system.
Thanks, Chair.
Are there any other questions? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, we'll move on to items for decision. Agenda item 9 is the Scottish Housing Regulator Annual Assurance Statement, and Annette will speak to this report. Annette.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks committee approval to submit the annual assurance statement to the Scottish Housing Regulator. Members might recall that in 2019, the regulator published a revised regulatory framework. The most significant change for local authorities was the requirement to submit an annual assurance statement confirming compliance with regulatory requirements. South Lanarkshire's second statement was approved by committee back in November 2020. The Annual Assurance Statement 2021 for the Council is attached to Appendix 1. The assurance required is provided through a wide range of arrangements which are in place at a council and a resource-wide level. A summary of the key requirements and how these are addressed is attached to Appendix 2. As a result of COVID-19, the regulator issued revised guidance for landlords. This recognised that the likely impact of the pandemic would have on the ability to fully comply with all regulatory requirements and required landlords to acknowledge where this is the case. For the resource, there is only one area where full compliance has not been met. As noted at 4.5, the Council is partially compliant with fire safety guidance at one Gypsy Traveller site. A programme of improvement work has progressed, although impacted by restrictions relating to the pandemic, and achieving full compliance remains a key focus. Subject to approval, the annual statement will be signed by the Chair of the Committee and forwarded to the Regulator. Committee is then asked to approve the recommendation that the South Lanarkshire Council Annual Assurance Statement for 2021 be approved and submitted to the Regulator. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Annette. Are there any questions? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 9, which is in relation to an asset transfer to Biggin District Men's Shed. And Joanne Foulkes will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise committee of a request for community asset transfer of the former Walston Primary School at Elsrickle. Biggar and District's Main Shed have been seeking a permanent base since becoming established 2 years ago, from which to run their workshops. They approached the council seeking ownership of the former school under the terms of the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015. The request was validated on the 11th of May. The closing date for public representations was the 21st of June, and the proposal was considered by the assessment panel on the 19th of August. The details of the matters considered by the assessment panel are set out in sections 3.6 to 3.8 of the report. The assessment panel considered that the property was appropriate for the proposed use, and although the membership of the organisation is just over the minimum requirement of 20, this will increase as the workshop facility is available. The panel did, however, have concerns regarding the viability and sustainability of the project. There was no funding identified for the purchase of the property or for the required repairs, and the model for income to cover the ongoing costs had some considerable risks. In light of these concerns, discussions took place with the Biggar and District Mains Shed, and it was agreed to transfer the request from a purchase to that of a lease. The proposed terms of the lease agreement are set out in section 5 of the report. The rental value of the property is £6,000 per annum, and the community benefit discount has been assessed at 65%. The proposed rental is therefore £2,100 per annum, and a 1-year rent-free is proposed, which would reflect the market terms if the council was advertising the property for let, and also gives the organisation the time to become properly established. As mentioned, the property requires repair before it can be occupied, in particular to the electrical systems. These works will be carried out by the council, however the cost is being covered by funding from the new Community Asset Transfer Fund. I would recommend to the committee the asset transfer by lease on the terms and conditions set out in section 5 of the report.
Thank you, Joanne. Are there any questions in relation to the report? I can see Councillor Holford has his hand up.
Just to say, I'm very much in favour of this. I think this is a really good use of this property, and I'm glad to see it done. I would love to have seen the rent lower, but I appreciate that the calculation has been done. So just to say thank you for all the work that's been done on this.
Comments? Are there any other questions or comments? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
And we'll move on to agenda item 11. At this point, I'd ask Councillor Chalmers to leave the meeting. You can confirm that. See, that's taking place now.
That's confirmed, yep.
Yeah, so we're on agenda item 11, which is in relation to an asset transfer to Blantyre Soccer Academy, and Frank will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise the committee of the request for an asset transfer by sale of the open space at Birch Place, Blantyre, to Blantyre Soccer Academy, and request the approval for the principal terms and conditions as set out in section 5. If I can take committee to section 3, that sets out the background of the report, that in 2019 the council transferred ownership of the former Rowan Hall, Blantyre, to Blantyre Soccer Academy, from which it now operates a community hub. Section 3 also goes on to detail some of the activities carried out by Blantyre Soccer Academy, and also that this request is seeking to extend its community activities in partnership with local organisations to create a community food growing area, a COVID-19 memorial area, a wild growing area, and outdoor recreational space. Section 3.6 details some of the items that the Community Asset Transfer Panel considered, and that's detailed within section 3.6 to 3.9. Section 4 contains the assessment panel's conclusions, in that the Soccer Academy is an organisation which has a stable membership and continues to develop capacity, and that the proposal is viable and sustainable. However, planning consent will be required for a change of use. Section 5 details the proposal, and the main points within Section 5 is that the purchase price is £800, that a date of entry will be agreed between the parties, and the sale is conditional upon the granting of planning consent for change of use, and that a long stop date of 18 months between the signing of the missives and the settlement has been agreed. Section 6 confirms there are no employee implications. And Section 7 details the financial implications in terms of the £800 that would be received. In terms of Section 8, there are no climate change and sustainable environmental implications. And Section 9 details that in terms of the Community Empowerment Act 2015, the Council has until the 24th of November of this year to provide notice of its decision. If I can refer committee back to Section 2 and ask that the recommendations within are approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Frank. Councillor Faulkner.
Hi, thanks, Chair. It's just a pity we don't have any Blantyre councillors here, two with apologies and one with a declaration of interest. In principle, I would have no objection to this, but I'm just wondering whether our officers are playing due diligence in this application. If I take you 3.71, Blantyre Soccer Academy is a Scottish charitable organisation. 3.73, the objects of the organisation are bullet point 1 football, bullet point 2 football, bullet point 3 football, right? There is no chance of having any matches in that piece of ground there. If I also go back to 3.4, in addition to placing an application on the council's portal, notices were placed on the property. I've been out and visited the property twice due to another community asset transfer, which might come at a later meeting. And my understanding, the hub and where they placed that notice is surrounded by a 6-foot high steel fence. So how people can actually get to see that unless they get great eyesight, I don't know. So I just want to know if the officers played due diligence and if the Charity Commission would deem this as part of the charity's remit. Thank you.
Danny, would you like to respond?
I certainly would, yep. Thanks, Chair. Councillor Faulkner, just to assure you that we would always pay due diligence to this and every other paper that comes before committee to make sure that it is appropriate and it is in a fit state to come forward. So I can assure you that we have paid due diligence. In 3.73, you did just reference football. I'll take you to the second bullet point, which talks about football, health, self-esteem, health and friendship within the community of Blantyre and its environs, which I think is a much wider remit than football and covers the areas that are covered by this application. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Danny. Councillor Faulkner, are you satisfied with that?
Sorry, I am satisfied. That's just a legacy, Josh. And I'm satisfied. Thank you.
And Polly, could you invite Maureen back into the meeting?
Certainly, Chair.
And if you could confirm when she's back in.
Councillor Chalmers is back in the meeting, Chair.
Thank you, Pauline. Appreciate that. We'll move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 12, which is in relation to the lease to Rutherglen Lawn Tennis Club in the perimeter of Overton Park, Rutherglen. And Joanne will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise committee of a request for a lease of land at Overton Park, Rutherglen, for the construction of an indoor tennis court and community hub. This is not a community asset transfer request, as Rutherglen Lawn Tennis Club is not an eligible body under the terms of the Community Empowerment Act. However, it is a request for a concessionary lease at a rental of £1, and therefore officers have applied the same considerations when taking into account assessing the request. The detail of the matters considered are set out in section 3.4 to 3.9 of the report. There are a number of property issues with regards to the proposal, and whilst the land requested is within the area of Overton Park formerly used as tennis courts, it is designated priority green space in the local development plan, and there are also potentially ground contamination issues. Detailed designs will be required before planning permission can be sought, and this will also require ground surveys and soil reports. Initial indications, however, are that the provision of tennis courts within the park would be an acceptable land use. Whilst the organisation is not an eligible body in terms of the Community Empowerment Act, it is a not-for-profit organisation, and it does within its constitution have an asset lock which prevents any assets or money being distributed to its members. Rutherglen Lawn Tennis Club have a membership of over 440. However, their programmes of community development, they estimate that they deliver services to over 3,000 people through the provision of free tennis lessons to children, coaching programmes and other community activities they deliver. The covered courts proposal will be supported by a community cafe, publicly accessible toilets, and the offer of space for the delivery of community activities. The cafe is seen as a key element, offering healthy eating, connections to the adjoining community growing project, free Wi-Fi, and a base from which to deliver community activities. There is a considerable way to go in developing this project. There will require to be detailed designs and, as I mentioned, soil surveys, and there'll also need to be funding applications submitted and detailed planning consent sought. These next stages will require investment by the tennis club, and they are therefore seeking the support of the council on the principle of the ground lease before they take matters further forward. The proposed terms and conditions for the lease are set out in section 5 of the report. However, to mitigate against the unknown elements of the project, the offer of lease will be conditional on the terms and conditions set out in 4.4 of the report, namely that we have to agree the final location and orientation of the site, that they will have to obtain their ground condition and contamination reports, obtain planning consent, and that there will be a long stop date here of 3 years within which they have to remedy these conditions, failing which the offer of lease would fall. And the major one there is they will also have to secure the funding for the development. This is an ambitious project to be taken forward, and I would recommend the ground lease and the terms and conditions set out on sections 4 and 5 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll bring in Janine to speak first.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Because obviously I've had a lot of concerns locally regarding this, and there's been much engagement with my constituents on it. I fully appreciate Rutherglen Lawn Tennis Club and what they're trying to do here, all that they've put into the proposal and everything that they already do for the community. Absolutely great organisation. Concerns that I'm hearing about, which I'll just list. So we've already lost swathes of the park, which was gifted to the community, to create a dual carriageway in Mill Street, for a hospital that was then sold off for private housing, for a private care home 20 years ago. The community had to fight against the council taking 10% of the park when they proposed to develop private housing. So there's a feeling locally about, do we have to keep, as a community, fighting to keep our green space, especially when the presumption would be against. The area is well used by the local community. I can vouch for that as a user of the park, and that's what I'm hearing from constituents. So it's freely available. People use it for a variety of reasons, and it's been raised with me by a number of constituents. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with it just being a piece of open ground? In the last few days especially, I'm hearing there's not been enough engagement with the local community. I appreciate that the club had an online consultation and a consultation with the immediate neighbours, but I'm hearing concerns that that wasn't wide enough. Also, the club has over 400 members, and if they all took part, as well as folk participating online, that might have skewed the results. So This park serves the entire Rutherglen area from Burnside, Burnhill, Springhall, Farmcross, and I appreciate that the time for public consultation is if it gets to a planning stage, but I would want to see as much engagement as possible with all of these communities, not just to find out if they've got concerns about the detail of the proposal, but whether they want this club in the first place. There remain all the concerns that we've already discussed previously about that are all planning issues, including parking, road safety, light and noise pollution, the size and durability of the structure, security around the area at night. And while these have been somewhat addressed by the club, the remain concerns, and I appreciate this is a preliminary paper and it's got a long way to go. If this is passed at today's committee, I'll be moving that it's brought back to area committee for full local security for planning, so that these concerns can be fully addressed by the local councillors for the area. And again, there's still concerns about what exactly the community access is going to be and how this is going to be guaranteed once the project's completed.
Thank you, Janine. And before I bring in Councillor Lennon, I'll bring in Geraldine McCann.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a point about the motion that Councillor Killiecase said she was going to bring. That wouldn't be a competent motion for this committee because this committee can't fetter the planning decision process. That would be a matter that would sit within the planning decision-making guidance, and there are strict criteria for what goes to area committees and to planning committee, and the level of objections, etc., that would be in place. That would be one of those considerations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. My understanding of what you had said was that if it does progress past this point, then she will try and bring it to a local area committee when the planning committee comes, so not necessarily moving a motion at this stage. Janine, can you confirm that is the case?
Yes, your interpretation of what I was intending to say is correct, Josh. I meant to say that I intended to ask for it to be brought to an area committee, notwithstanding what Geraldine says about the number of objections and so forth.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to Councillor Lennon.
Yeah, obviously I'm a local member for the area Overton Park as well. Kind of respectfully couldn't disagree more with Councillor Killiecase. I think that's a fantastic proposal. I think that it would add a huge amount of value to the park. I think that it would really increase the ability of people in the community to access the park and really to engage with it. It would really enhance what remains of the rest of the park, particularly with regard to the facilities, and particularly things like the toilet facilities, the fact that there would be a cafe on site, and also it would mean that there are community sports facilities that were available for public use. I suppose like an element of that is maybe a difference in our kind of, or like how I see the evolution of the park. The area in question previously was council owned and council operated tennis courts, but unfortunately they closed well over 20 years ago now, and I've kind of subsequently fallen into disuse. So really I see this as a kind of a change in direction from the park kind of losing facilities, and actually I really see it in the same kind of vein as Grow 73's community asset transfer, where they've been able to kind of take on some of the bowling greens that immediately kind of adjoin this area, and I think these new facilities are really a positive development and will greatly enhance it. In terms of some of the concerns that have been raised about parking or about kind of other elements, looking over the report that the Lawn Tennis Club have submitted to the committee, I can't imagine how they could more thoroughly answer it. I don't have any concerns at all about the degree of, about the impact it would have on the local parking or anything like that. I've had quite a wee bit of engagement as well with local constituents, particularly, I should say, those who live on Overton Drive that are the immediate neighbours of it. We got a big wave of emails a few months ago, and when this was first mooted, and I made the effort to go around and speak to every single person, or well, knock on the door anyway, of every single person that had emailed me and had given an address that I could speak to them. Or, with the exception of one person, they were all actually in favour of the proposal in principle. They had some concerns over parking, but after a conversation, they were all more or less on side, with the exception of one person, and that one person, effectively, their point was really that they liked the trees that would be felled as a result of that. Ideally, I'd like the trees to stay as well, but I think on balance, this is a brilliant proposal. I think it would greatly increase the ability of the local community to use the park. And in the world in which we live, absolutely, I think this is one of the best uses that I could think of for the area. Obviously, in an ideal world, we had a good socialist Labour government in Holyrood and Westminster, and administration on the council would be municipally owned, free at the point of use, public tennis courts everywhere, and everything would be fantastic. That's maybe not on the cards for the foreseeable future. So I think, in terms of how we can practically add value to the park, increase its amenity to local people, encourage engagement, I think this is really a 10 out of 10, and I couldn't be more supportive.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Fulton.
Thanks, Chair. I hope you can hear me. I've had difficulties with my microphone today. I kind of share Councillor Kaliki's concerns. I'm not a ward councillor, but I live in the ward and I'm a stone's throw away from the park, and I have been getting a lot of correspondence in the last couple of days about this. And I would just like to go through a number of concerns that has been raised with me. The first one is the area is already an area used by the community for numerous reasons, including fitness groups, youngsters kicking the ball about. There's even been outdoor judo practice there. Cycling. It's the area where I taught my own children to cycle, and where I was taught to cycle as a child. So I don't think I don't have a opposition to the principle of the club wanting an indoor facility, but I don't think where they want it is the best place to put it. I don't think it's the best use of community land, which is already used by the community for a variety of reasons, and no limited access. We have a community group that operates already in Overton Park, and they've been promoting the use of the park for over 10 years, and have long-term ambitions to improve the park, including the area that we're discussing today. Their long-term plans include, a toddler park, improve and enlarge the existing BMX park that's already there, install a skate park, and also have a dedicated area for dog walkers, so it doesn't annoy or inconvenience other people using the park. And I know that they've been speaking to Land Services for over 10 years to get things done. And why have they not been afforded the opportunity to develop this land as a bona fide community group? If the tennis club is looking to build on unused land, I don't have a problem with that. We've got derelict land down in Burnhill, which used to be the old Burnhill Leisure Centre. Why was that area not given to them? If the tennis club is genuine about community engagement and getting more people involved in tennis, that's an ideal area, because it's in an area where people don't have much in the way of gardens. We're talking about the tenements of Main Street, Rutherglen, not Kilmarnock, Farm Cross, and around about the Burnhill area. So that's a number of concerns that I've got. I've also got concerns that the main reason, when you look through the paper, is the club's had an increase in membership going from 100 to 400, which is fantastic. and they need to expand, and that's good to hear that the people are want to become that. But I just get the feeling that the community hub aspect is an afterthought, just so it can get through today. When you look at the cost of membership, it's over £200 for an adult and £72 for junior membership. And they're saying that anybody can use it for £5 an hour. Now, if you're a youngster coming from somewhere like Quigley's or Spittal or Blairbeath or anywhere out in the Rutherglen area, £5 is an awful lot of money, just where you could actually just play tennis in the park, which is already there. My last point, I'm sorry for going on about it, is that because I have had numerous people contact me, was again, and Councillor Kaliki's lighted upon it, is the consultation. As I said, I live 2 streets away. I didn't get any notification of an online consultation. I've had my wife's friends contacting my wife saying, what's this all about? They talk about a consultation and they've never been consulted. So and Janine, it's fine to have an online consultation, but if the local community's not being made aware of an online consultation, they'll not know about it. And this is what we're getting now in the last couple of days when this paper has been made public, that people are going, where has this came from? And sorry for going on. So this is my concern about it. And I would support Janine that if this goes through today, that I will also be pushing that.
Okay, thanks, Alistair.
Towards area committee.
Thank you. And I'm also conscious that we're drifting towards the hour mark. So if I could invite Councillor Brown in, and then I'll invite Councillor Kalikis to wrap us up.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this one as well. I think we're going to be realistic about this one, as Martin Lennon, I think, rightly said. I mean, this is the actual project on the table. It may well be that in an ideal world, other things would be done and various people would take forward other things, or the council would spend money and all that. We're not in that situation. We've got a good project here, which everybody, I think, accepts as an exciting project, and which the only dispute about is whether it should go in the park or somewhere else. Now, I know, and this is the point that's been made before, that the tennis club has looked at other sites previously. The site that Alistair mentioned at Burn Hill, I think I'm right in saying, is the subject of a planning application for community gardens at the moment. So I don't think that site is in any event available, regardless of any other considerations. The other site that was looked at was at Stonewall High School, which for various reasons had to be rejected because of a number of issues that arose on that one, without going into that particular matter. Now, it seems to me the point in principle here is the availability of the park for this particular purpose. Now, like others, I'm fairly cautious about this kind of thing. It seems to me that we want to keep the park as a vibrant hub of activity, but it does seem to me that this will in fact add to that, because it adds a considerable facility. And I'm attracted particularly by the issue of the cafe and the toilet. Now, these things are not just add-ons, they're things which have been germane to the project from the beginning, and I think are central to what we'll be going forward here. If some of these things can't be delivered, then I think we're into slightly different territory. The club have also bent over backwards, if I'm not mistaken, to look at the question of public access. And there are some free slots available, I think has been said in the report as well. We need obviously to get that all firmed up by the time the thing is finished, but it's an early stage yet. These sort of details need to be sorted out. So the issue in principle, as I say, is the use of the park. And I think it's a reasonable and attractive use of the park for that particular reason. There's been some issue made by Alistair about consultation. Now, bearing in mind this is a voluntary sector organisation, if you like, I think the club have done a considerable amount to deal with the consultation. They've had the online consultation. They've met with a variety of community groups and individuals. They've met with some of the local people as well. No doubt there's people who have been missed out on all of that. I'm sure that's the case in almost every consultation. There will be statutory rights when it comes to the planning application anyway, and I think that there's a wide availability of knowledge about the existence of this particular project. Now, the detail of the things to be worked out, a lot of this is in fact planning application issues rather than the principle of the thing which I dealt with before. I think it's important to remember that this is although it's in inverted commas, a limited company, it is nevertheless an organisation which was pointed out by Joanne, is in a position which, if it was to go defunct for any particular reason, its assets would go to other organisations of the same sort. It's not one of these things where it's sold off and becomes unavailable in that way in the future. So it does seem to me that there's a good project to go forward here. Clearly, there's a need for continued working with organisations like Friends of Overton Park and with the local residents about the detail of this as it goes forward. I think it's appropriate it goes to the area committee to be looked at in some of this context, not as part of the planning application, but just because it's the focus, if you like, of community interest at that level and can focus on it in a way which maybe this committee, with its wider issues, isn't able to do so quite so well. That would be my view on the thing. I think it should go ahead in principle. I think we should obviously look at the detail, want to have it tied up. Will it come back to the committee in terms of the final detailing? That's quite important to know. As well as being approved by the Director of Housing. That's an issue there. One small issue, that it talks in the report about assignations to another club being permitted. Should that be with a wee bit tighter, with the permission of the council? I'm not entirely sure. I want to have that happen just just without the permission of the council being looked at in that way. Just a small technical issue on that matter. If Joanne can maybe respond on that one. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay. And then, I think we've had a lengthy debate on it. We've reached the hour mark, so if both Martin and Alistair are okay, we'll draw the discussion to a conclusion after Janine speaks. But Joanne, could you respond, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, in terms of the assignation, certainly the detailed wording can tighten up to say it's with the Council's express consent.
Does that satisfy you, Councillor Brown?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Kalikis?
Right, sorry, Chair. I'm not happy not to speak a second time if Councillor Kalikis is going to speak a second time.
Okay, that's it. I'm more than happy for you to come back in. Just, we had reached that. If you could make a short contribution after that would be helpful.
Chair, I wasn't looking to. I've missed what my sound went a bit funny there. So I missed what Joanne Forbes's response was to Councillor Brown.
Joanne, could you repeat your response to Councillor Brown?
Certainly, Chair. I was confirming, Councillor Kalikis, that the assignation clause of any lease would be strengthened to say that any assignation would only be with the express consent of the Council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Martin, would you like to contribute?
Yeah, just to answer a couple of points. Or a couple of questions that I think Councillor Fulton was maybe making rhetorically, like the reason that, because a lot of those questions have been answered like very directly by the tennis club. The reason that it's they were suggesting Overton Park rather than the former site of the sports centre in Burnhill is because it means that it's walking distance. And if one of the issues here is about parking, the fact that you'd be able to walk between the different sites of the tennis courts that are operated by the tennis club, like that is a relevant consideration. Also because the area in Burnhill is not some like free, unused up for grabs area. It's already in quite a lot of good use. There are community groups in Burnhill that would quite like to actually improve that use on their own. It's regularly used again by exercise clubs, by football clubs, and so it's not as if it's like spare ground that we can just kind of like push facilities that aren't wanted in other places. And for that matter, I think this is an excellent site for it. I think that is wanted in that area, and I think that would contribute a huge amount of value. Councillor Brown mentioned the toilets as well, and I maybe didn't make this clear when I was speaking earlier, but I think that would make a huge difference to the accessibility of the park. It's a park that I use very regularly as well, and I was there recently with my older sister with her newborn child, and she didn't have anywhere where she could use the toilet with a newborn baby because there weren't toilets. So adding this, I think, would hugely materially benefit the use of the park for the ordinary public. But thank you.
Okay, thanks. And because you mentioned Councillor Fulton, I'll let him respond, and we'll draw the discussion to a conclusion afterwards. Councillor Fulton.
Thanks for that. Just in my previous statements, I did ask a direct question. It might have been lost. And basically, what I'm saying is we have a community group that has plans for that area. Why haven't they not been given the opportunity to develop this area? And I'm talking about Friends of Overton Park, which have been operating in there since, well, they constituted since 2011. And they've been, very successful in the events they organise, and they just feel that they've been overlooked in this instance. And I think maybe I could get an answer for that, please.
Apologies, I'm muted. Joanne, I wonder if you could respond to Councillor Fulton's point.
Yes, Chair. Councillor Fulton, from my own team, the property team, we've not had any specific proposals brought forward from Overton, Friends of Overton Park, looking to develop that site. I know they engage with Land Services over management of the park and different areas of the park. And if they have proposals that they want to take on an asset transfer, or they want to take on a lease, or want to take on some project, we're more than happy to engage with them.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. I think that's been a pretty healthy debate. Can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
And we'll take a short 5-minute recess, longer than 5. We'll come back at 11:15 to resume our discussion and take the last 3 items on the agenda. Thank you. We'll come back at about 1:15. If the clerk could just check that everyone has returned.
Thanks, Chair. I've been through the procedure and can confirm that everyone has returned to the meeting. And Councillor Greenshields is also here, having joined at some point earlier on in the meeting.
Okay, great. Welcome, Councillor Greenshields. We'll move on to agenda item 13, which is the proposed lease of ground at Palace Grounds car park. And Frank will speak to this report. Frank.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to grant a 99-year lease of ground at the Palace Grounds car park in favour of ESP Limited. If I can take the committee to section 3, that details the background of the report. The main points being within that in December 2019, the Housing and Technical Resources Committee granted a lease to Fastnet UK to construct and operate a rapid vehicle charging station at this location, and that during the process of the details of the design of this construction, Fastnet have identified that they require a substation to service the facility. Section 4 of the report details the terms and conditions. The main points within that the lease will be for a period of 99 years, and the rent is to be a grassum of £9,000. Also, that ESP Limited will have the right to sublease the area to Scottish Power Distribution Network, who will operate the substation ultimately. Section 5 confirms there are no employee implications. Section 6 details the financial implications, including the £9,000 to the Hamilton Common Good account as a result of the lease. Section 7 details the climate change and sustainability and environment implications, and the main one being that the electric vehicle charging points will allow greater use of electric vehicles within the area. Other implications are detailed within Section 8, and Section 9 details the equality impact and consultation arrangements which have been undertaken. If I can refer committee back to Section 2 and ask that the recommendations within are approved. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Faulkner, I think you're on mute.
No, I'm not on mute. Sorry, I'm not on mute.
Okay, could you ask your question?
The question is, a grassum, my understanding is grassum, the lump sum paid when taking up a lease in addition to regular rent. What is the regular rent?
Right.
For 99 years.
Councillor, the regular rent, and I can maybe ask if Joanne, who is the expert in these matters, the grassum is for the small area that will contain the substation. We already have agreed a lease in 2019 with ESP for the area which will contain the charging station. And like I say, if I can maybe ask Joanne if she can confirm that in terms of the details, but that's my understanding of it.
Joanne?
Yep, thank you, Frank. Yes, you're correct, Councillor, that grassum is a lump sum payment in lieu of rent. So if you pay a grassum, you don't pay a rent. It would be £1 per annum if asked. But the cost of billing a small rent actually is higher than the cost of collecting the rent. Collecting the rent is higher than the value of the rent. So you do a grassum, you pull it all together and you make a one-off payment. But this is separate from the lease for the actual charging station, which has already been approved. This is the substation only that will serve that.
Can I just a supplementary, Chair?
Thank you. Joanne, Alan, I'll supplementary.
I mean, I'm looking at the Collins definition of grassum. It's a lump sum paid when first taking up the lease, which they're doing, in addition to regular rent. It's a 99-year lease, irregular rent.
Joanne, could you respond?
Certainly. Yep. A regular rent and a Grassam in Scotland would not generally be used together. Grassams are generally not used nowadays, except for where we are looking at something like a utility, where the actual rent per annum would be small.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, are there any further questions? If there are none, can we agree on the recommendations?
Agree.
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll move on. Alan, can I ask you to take your hand down? We'll move on
I'm
to
trying to do it, Chair, to be fair. I'm trying to do it.
No problem. We'll move on to agenda item 14, which is South Lanarkshire Council's Strategic Housing Investment Plan, and Annette will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. This standard report provides committee with an update on the good progress made delivering additional affordable homes in 2020-2021 and seeks approval of the new Strategic Housing Investment Plan, known as the SHIP, for the period 22 to 27. The SHIP is a technical planning document required to be completed and submitted to the Scottish Government on an annual basis. The SHIP closely links to the local housing strategy approved by Executive Committee in 2017 and guides investment funding to meet the strategic priorities for affordable housing. The SHIP has been prepared to take an account of the impact of COVID-19, of the revised guidance issued by the Scottish Government, and takes account of the financial resources that have been announced. The plan is not a programme and will be subject to change as new sites become available and some are assessed as not viable. As noted in Section 4, COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the development programme. Since restrictions on construction were eased, good progress has been made, however, there has been an impact on delivery timescales. The report also highlights that Section 5, the Scottish Government's new long-term strategy, Housing to 2040, which includes an ambition to deliver an additional 110 affordable homes. Section 7 of the report provides an update on the progress made during 2020-21, noting a total of 339 additional affordable homes for social rent being delivered across South Lanarkshire by both the Council and our RSL partners. Progress on the Council's Homes Plus programme is also noted at Section 8. Work continues to deliver 1,000 additional homes, with 949 new homes either delivered or under construction on a further 15 sites. Procurement across the remainder of the sites in the programme is well underway. A summary of the completions, acquisitions and current sites is detailed in Appendix 2. As noted in Section 9 and 10 of the report, the Scottish Government has provided resource planning assumptions to local authorities covering the period to March 2026. The RPA for 26-27 has been forecast using the RPA for the previous year, and assumptions have also been made in relation to years 1 to 5 of the plan, in line with Scottish Government guidance, bringing the total RPA used for the 5-year plan to £189.717 million, as noted in Table A. The SHIP has therefore been developed for forward planning purposes to show the potential development capacity at this level of resource. The full SHIP, which is attached to Appendix 3, reflects the Council's priorities for council new build and acquisitions, as well as the ambition of our housing association partners who have confirmed their capacity to develop. The tables within the SHIP include projects that have already started and have funding commitments, as well as a number of new potential sites consistent with the LHS priorities. Table 1 sets out the priorities for grant funding to be delivered over the 5-year period. In total, the sites identified have an estimated capacity delivering 2,606 new social rented affordable homes in the 5-year period across the 4 areas. The capacity to increase the supply of affordable homes has been over-programmed to allow for any slippage and enable investment to be targeted. The assumptions and forecasts set out are based upon the best information available and will be subject to refinement as part of the annual review. Any further proposals to deliver beyond the Council's existing target of 1,000 units will be presented to committee for approval. The SHIP will be submitted to the Scottish Government at the end of October, subject to approval, and will form part of a national plan for the Minister to approve. Committee is then asked to approve the following recommendations: that the progress made in delivering affordable housing through the SHIP and the Strategic Local Plan be noted, and that the content of the Strategic Housing Investment Plan for 2022 to 27, as set out in Appendix 3 to this report, be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. This is an interesting and an important report. I didn't really want to go into the merits of the thing. I want to ask two specific questions, if I might. First of all, a very small point relating to my own ward. There's mentioned at the end in the detailed list of Fernbury Avenue. I just wanted to actually ascertain if that remains the two sites that were available there or just one of them. I can deal with that offline if need be. The second thing more significantly is in terms of the energy efficiency stuff that's talked about at 215, about the silver greener standard and so forth. I wondered if it might be helpful for the committee to have at some point a bit more information about what that involves, because I'm conscious that there's, I think I'm right in saying that there's planning guidance awaited from the Scottish Government on some of these higher energy standards and so forth. All the stuff in the background about heating systems, the phasing out of gas, that kind of thing, zero carbon things, all that kind of thing. And I just wondered whether we were in a position on the projects that are new, not the ones necessarily that are happening at the moment, to be able to, if you like, hit the higher standards that we're aiming towards, rather than having something which is kind of halfway there, but then has to be looked at again in terms of future increasing standards. This is as far up to date as we can get it in the knowledge we've got and the funding that's available.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. In reference to the first point, I think it would be helpful if you took that offline and discussed it with the results. Otherwise, we could be here all day with individual members asking about the
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, Annette, would you mind answering the second point that Councillor Brown raised?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the standards, not just energy efficiency, but there are other standards that we're being asked to meet in terms of the new build programme than the current projects that have been commissioned, if you like, and are being developed to meet the current standards. But our ambition is to reach the highest energy efficiency standards that we can for any further new build that we bring forward from the council side. That's not just, as I say, energy, it's got fire safety standards and other standards that we're now being required to achieve. If you want any further detail on that, then we can provide that after the meeting. But we will be aiming to meet the required standards for grant approval going forward. And our ambition is to meet the highest standards that we can. So in terms of further detail, Councillor Brown, we can provide that after the committee if required.
That would be very welcome, actually. I suspect other members might like that as well, because I think it just to get a flavour of where we're aiming for on that and what the standards are that we're meeting for those of us who are not, if you like, technical experts, I think would be very useful. Thanks, Chair.
Are there any further questions in relation to the paper? If there are none, can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, and as the next 4 items on the paper are for noting I'd ask committee's approval that we move the recommendations as a block. Councillor Kalikis.
Agreed.
Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. As there is no urgent business, so I would draw today's meeting to a close and thank you all for your attendance.